So tell us about your son and what happened after a
Okay, well, Braden went in. He was going in for a football physical on May 14th, 2021. And he was 11 at the time. And we went in to do a football physical. He passed everything with flying colors. He took a urine test that day. He passed everything. They measured 10 things on that urine test. And the most, alarming, he tested negative for glucose and ketones. And he tested negative for any liver issues, kidney issues, 100%. They cleared him with a physical form. I said, oh, wait, before I leave, can you give me the 7th grade required shot? Because I've been getting paperwork in the mail, the district's sending out, he needs a. So I don't have all of his I don't have it with me. And so they said, well, that's the Tdap. And they said, we also can give him the Menectra shot, which I said, I don't know what that is. And they said, it's for meningitis. And I said, okay. So before we left, after he tested negative for glucose and ketones, about 5-10 minutes later, they came in, gave him his. We left that night. He didn't feel good with his stomach ache. And that was on a Friday at like 3:30. That weekend, he said, Mom, what does a heart attack feel like? And can you feel my chest? Put your hand right here because you can feel it. It feels like it's racing. So I was like, oh, Braden, you're just going through puberty. Didn't think anything of it. About 14 days later, he started acting a little weird, like drinking a lot of water. But 14 days later, he started vomiting. And we went to Disneyland Memorial Day weekend, and he was just vomiting at night. And I was like, gosh, maybe it's because he had to wear a mask all day. And then a total of 43 days later, he was drinking so much fluid. I just happened to have a glucose monitor, and I took his blood, and it said high. And I don't even know what that means. So I looked up Google, and it said anything high is over 600. And I said, what? So I took him immediately to the emergency room, and they ran tests on him, and he was 614 blood sugar. And they immediately got him into the hospital, and he was in tachycardia when he arrived. So he was in diabetic ketoacidosis, tachycardia, and a 614 blood sugar, and he had a 12.4 A1C. So I was like, gosh, he was just fine 6 weeks ago. There's nothing wrong with him. We get in an ambulance, we go to Sacramento, we go through the whole learning how to give his insulin shots and everything. And I get back and I go to the doctor to get a referral to an endocrinologist. And they showed me his record and said, this is impossible. He tested negative for glucose and ketones prior to getting those. I go, you're right. As I said, she said he was just fine when he was here. I said, I know exactly. And I said, that's right. He got those minutes after he tested negative. And then all went downhill. I mean, it was just like one thing led to another. And he was in, and then the next thing I know, 43 days later, he's the new type 1 diabetic. So after that, then I started researching what is an injury. And I started researching what happens when you have an injured person. I didn't even know what an adverse reaction was. So then I contacted my lawyer, and we started doing some paperwork and getting out there and getting our case together. And then that's when I realized, wait a second, what kind of preventative do we have before? And I looked, and all I saw was doctor-patient discussions, information statements, and V-Safe app, which was after. And I thought, well, if Braden got a urine test prior, why can't other kids and parents be offered the option to have a urine test and blood work prior to getting those? So in case your son or daughter or anybody has an adverse reaction, you have a baseline in their file to refer to in case, to go back and say, hey, they tested negative for glucose and ketones like Braden did. And so I added that vaccine bill. I said, okay, I feel like there was no vaccine safety bills being offered or trying to be, implemented in the system. And so I thought, I'm going to write a bill, and I wrote Braden's bill. And I said, on behalf of basically what happened to Braden, these children or parents should be offered a urine test or blood work prior in case of anything, Guillain-Barré, there's, Epstein, all those adverse reactions. And I have heard from several parents after that now that type 1 has been in question since the 80s, late 80s, 90s. There's been cases. And then I went on VAERS. I didn't even know what VAERS was. I looked up all these cases, and it's just, and then I looked up the increase since 2017. It's like a 30% increase in type 1 diabetes. And this should be the question. When I checked into the ER, I feel like I should have had a question. Have you had a recently? Nobody asked me that. And I was like, no, that should have been one of the questions. So, and there's no type 1. So I immediately had a antibodies test done as soon as I got home from the hospital. I had his ANA done. I had his DNA done. I have a heavy metals test done on him. I was adamant, and I'm sure, I'm still, I just wanted to prove that he didn't have, he was negative a week prior, he was a negative in the ER, and he was a negative for antibodies, a week after the ER too.